Here we are with Mike for Gold Rush and a life lesson. Now, you got something in your pocket.
Oh, I do have something in my pocket.
Now, you're out metal detecting. You're looking for gold nuggets. And you go to a spot that has been hit a million times. And some of the people you're with are having their lunch, taking a break, and you find a signal over by a cactus.
It sounds like a can.
And it sounds like a can. So everybody says, don't bother with that. It's an old beer can.
Yep, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, don't even dig it. It's not even worth it. Well, here we are in this little bag. That, my friends, is a gold nugget.
2.5.
How many ounces?
2.5 ounces.
2.5 ounces of gold. What, 5 grand, more or less? Plus value,
much, but
plus value for the size?
yeah.
So I told Mike, I said, you should name this nugget the beer can nugget. Because this is a lesson. Dig everything.
Dig all your targets.
Because no matter how fancy your metal detector is, you'll get signals that get confused by something like this. Life lesson. There you go, Mike.
Big screaming target. Swore it was a can.
That's it. And there's probably another one buried deeper underneath it. But that one was a can.
And I talked to other people that said they'd swung over that same target and swore it was a can and didn't dig it up. But I had went back a second time when I got that. And my buddy sat down to take a break, so I decided to dig it. And that thing come popping out of the ground, and it was like, ooh, I shouldn't have walked away from that signal.
Let's see, this is another lesson. Say it was a can signal. You remove the can and go over the area again, and that can could have been masking that nugget.
Exactly.
So, dig every target. After you dig up the target, recheck your hole. Because
Always.
Frequently, you will find more. You find one nugget, you can find more deeper.
So I go into this area, and I'm kind of working my way through. I look down, and the first thing I discover is I'm finding pottery shards. One thing we haven't found in the last year or two was a lot of pottery shards. I found them in one location specifically. We found grinding holes, but we weren't finding arrowheads, pottery shards. And in Arizona, typically, everything stays close to the surface. You get some rains, everything will be on the surface. You find them physically on the ground. I'm looking down and I'm seeing pottery shards, so I'm thinking this is actually pretty cool. We're in an area that had been settled. One thing that's to me always obvious when you see someplace that perhaps the Salado or the Hokum or the Apache or the Pima were living in, gathering or whatever at one period of time, you usually will find the prospectors, other people will settle. People generally, like animals den, people will camp in the same spots. So I'm kind of looking through. I find the first thing I find is off to my right, there's a rock pathway. It has little piles of rocks. And I'm looking at it, it's going up, and I'm looking at it, and I'm totally kind of thrown off, because I'm like, okay, why am I finding this? So I'm start following it, and you can see it's a clear path, but it's not a defined path, and it's not, you could basically walk straight to the A to B, but the cairns are moving you around to different points. So I'm thinking, what is the strategy behind this? What is the thinking behind whoever did this? So you're going to point, you're looking around, taking a couple pictures, trying to kind of resolve it, take GPS, and so you can go back later and pinpoint it and see if there's a rhyme reason behind this meandering in people, because someone went through some trouble to do this. And that went on for several hundred yards. So I return back, start working, and I turn around, and I look, and there's a cactus with rocks circled around it. So I'm going to take in rocks, and made a circle around it like someone's front yard. And I'm thinking, that's kind of weird. So I guess somebody was sitting here and had nothing better to do. And I look over and there's another one. And then I start, it's one of those things where you probably, there's 12, but you don't see them till you see the first one. And then you start realizing every cactus has a circle of rocks placed around it. And it's like a cactus garden. And you're thinking, why would someone do this in the middle of nowhere in the desert? And then the one thing bumping in my head is, Frank said, the rock pathways and a lot of stuff that DeGrazia did at his gallery down by Tucson was he had these rock pathways. He would use like cactus parts and use them as flooring. He would use natural things to build things. And he was quite into that. So that's in the back of my mind. I'm not thinking this is particular, but I'm realizing someone or someones had spent a specific lot of time gathering rocks and making circles around these cacti everywhere, all over through the area.
Do you see it? You're right. See the pile of rocks? Uh-oh.
Right there.
See the next pile of rocks?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
See the next pile of rocks?
Trail markers?
Go up, yeah, it goes up and around.
Huh.
You'll see where it kind of ended and I started digging. Did you go any further than this really, Frank, up through here?
I was down there.
Okay.
See that rock sticking up?
Yeah.
Down by there.
Okay. You can't make it there because there's a wash. You can't get down over the hill. Okay.
The wash comes straight down.
Yes, I know.
It's not hard to get up and down. Yeah, they're marking a trail.
Yeah, but it dead ends up at the top. Doesn't go that far. You can see where there was soft dirt, there was a mound of rocks. I started digging in the soft dirt. It's just up around the corner here. Come on. Yeah, that isn't natural.
No.
See? And you have another pile. You can see where this goes up and around, can't you? And see the next pile.
People do weird things. And usually when they mark a spot and you walk a little bit and you find another one marked and then another one, they're marking a trail. So they remember, I got to get back to this spot. The ground's low, cactus are high. They look out for a cactus, and if they see a circle with rocks, then they know that's their next mark.
Where I dug. Yeah, there's no other. I walked all the way around here.
Huh.
Where do you find a ball?
I'll show you that when we get to it. All those two rocks were piled right there on top of that. And then I walked the perimeter, and there's no more piles of rocks anywhere. No idea. There's no trash. Nothing.
Yes, there is the beer bottle in front.
No, not up here. And the beer bottle was buried.
Up here.
It's different. No, it was not up here.
Down there.
It's down there. In a different spot.
Well, why the fuck did we walk up here?
Because the trail takes you up to that spot and I started digging that hole.
You never assume something means this or doesn't mean that. Because down the road, you say, hey, you know what? That's a trail we should have been following. Or perhaps that trail was for another purpose. Could have been from somebody hunting. You know, they had a spot that they liked and they wanted to mark it. And people would do that. It's like before they had GPS units. Now you take a GPS unit you mark your spot, it takes you right back to it. But in the past, you had to mark it in some way so you could find your way back. You get out in the desert, everything looks the same. And if you're only at a spot, you know, like once a year or whatever, and you want to go to an exact spot, that's a good way to do it.
Well, the pottery is in my footprint. Ear prints, everything. I kept thinking, I wonder how good this road was back in the day.
Well, this was, I think,
This was the access
used
road
to
for the
put that up.
The old ones, not those, because it's too far off from them. See, there's a big cable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big cable
And that
there.
camping area over there where they would.
So the cable and stuff leads me to believe that the old line might have been up on the hill here more.
It was. I found a bunch of insulators.
There's a piece. Pottery. So, area is covered in pottery. Sure. If it was a good rain, we'd find some arrowheads. But I thought this would be a neat place just to sit down and take a break. The bottle was right there. And there was about, Frank, about that much of it showing. I filmed when I found it, showed it, and then wiping it off. It was buried.
I know, they were hiding.
I was very careful in excavating it. This ground is really soft here too.
Well, I'm working around and I found this spot and there were these rocks piled and I'm digging and digging. I dug and there was nothing there. And it was very disappointing. So I was kind of like, wow, there should have been something here. It seemed odd. It kind of like someone was trying to get you there, put something there. So I was like, I'm not finding anything. And I turn around and I see this spot maybe this big, just a little spot. And I realize it's glass, and I'm thinking it's a piece of broken bottle. So I think I took my boot, and I rubbed my boot over it and realized it's bigger. I moved some of the dirt away from it. So I get down, and I looked around, and I found a stick or something, and I start kind of scraping away from it, doing my best version of a archaeologist, and trying to be very careful, and I realize I'm uncovering more and more, and it's an entirely intact whole beer bottle. Someone had taken it and literally had buried it in the dirt. It's an older beer bottle. It could have been from the 50s, 60s, 70s, but someone had actually put it there and had been there not only just this whole period of time. No one had walked away. If I would have stepped on it, I would have broke it probably, because it didn't have anything inside of it. So if you would have put the pressure, you probably would have busted it. But it had sat there for who knows how long, and just the recent rains had uncovered that much of it, just enough to catch my eye. And we found that. But that is, you know, I was very proud of two things that have happened recently. One was finding a completely intact Bob Ward whiskey bottle. I was very, that was so cool to me, because he shot almost all of them. They were busted, and I actually was gathering like partial whiskey bottles because I wanted one to put on the shelf, and I actually found a fully intact one. This was a very similar feeling of whoever drank this beer and left this here. Now, I didn't want to dig around the area and didn't want to dig the whole area up. I wanted to note the area and go back and look at it again, have Frank metal detect it, and see what else we could find. But it was very intriguing to me that we find this completely full, intact, buried beer bottle that had been there at least, I would gather it had been at least 30 to 40 years had been there.
See, it's weird, because to me, to be honest, as much activity as we found in here, and he was getting little pings all the time over there, right? You come over here and you find this, you found something buried, but we're finding no hits anymore, are we?
No.
So that to me is always kind of a weird thing, is, okay, why were we getting hits? Like there was all kinds of debris, all kinds of junk left behind from back in the day, and now you're suddenly finding less and less. The areas are pretty clean lately. Shit. Right in that hole?
Wait, move in. Right where that coil's sitting.
Oh, it's soft. Oh, did you see that? Oh, that's a cactus in my ass. Check it out, because there was a bunch of plates of iron.
Piece of junk. Right there.
Yeah.
Right there, somewhere.
Don't matter. Did you check by the spot where by the bottle? Okay, because I want to dig there a little more. But I want to let you do your thing first.
Yeah.
If you were looking for an area they would have dug in and found it easier, this would have been it, wouldn't it?
That's a shoal.
Yeah. Yeah, but this dirt's soft. Push that back in with your foot, Trevor. Oh. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of them, Frank. I told you that. Here. There's a whole fucking slew of them, man. Kinda crazy. Well, the pottery isn't, and the fucking spearhead wasn't, and the arrowhead. I threw it aside. I can't keep it. Get caught with that, I'm fucking in prison. It's in here somewhere. You can see my footprints, so it's like just like that. The only piece of debris I found, like a piece of trash, was a bracket or something.
You work very fast.
There's rocks around that one right there.
That's old too, because that the way that couples.
Yeah, they had these. They were hand twist.
Yeah.
It's rusted up.
Yeah, but this part isn't. That's what's weird, isn't
You
it?
could put some oil on there. That's a good bracket.
I'm very aware of what's here. I was here. But now I'm trying to look in other spots. Yeah, you had that one. So I'm thinking at this point, it's particularly kind of odd. Because I thought Frank had been too.
There's another one down here.
Well, you can see where they all lost it. It's only the little cactus, it's not the bigger cactus. It's only stuff that's, And then I started thinking, Frank, this whole embankment's loose stuff. I mean, if you were problem is I think if they buried it in this like spot, it would have eroded out again.
Yeah.
And it's too far away, they wouldn't have walked up here.
If this road was halfway decent, they could have drove up here. See the difference in the composition of the dirt, like it's been dug or been dug out, but it doesn't look like animals. It's gonna be a hell of a place to dig out though. So I'm hoping there's nothing there. No? Okay. If it's something important, then you kind of fucked it up by putting the mark by yourself there.
When you see a marking on a rock, and whether it's a blaze, you're looking to see if is it a trail, is it a trail that someone was following. You don't know if someone did it 5 years ago, 10, 20. You always look at blazes and you try to see if they mean something specific. This particular one didn't look old enough to be Salado Ho'okum, something from 1,000 years ago. But you're not sure if someone chipped it away to remind themselves. A couple guys drinking a bunch of beer and whiskey that were burying some paintings and decided, you know what, mark that rock. Or one of them just did it to remind themselves, hey, when we come back up here, we need to remember we turned left here. So you always pay attention to that stuff and you kind of look at it. It's generally, for me, get a GPS, take a picture, and then file it away. It's not something as important as always follow the lead. You want to always note it, and note it to the other people around you. I want Trevor and Frank to understand, hey, look at that. You guys see that? You see what do you think? And then just pass it by. If there's something else, another one comes up, then those two guys might catch the next one. It might be something we find a pattern, but you always want to let others know, hey, see that? Okay. But you're not being dismissive. You're just trying to make sure everyone's aware of the different things you see that are anomalies or man-made in the area, whether to dismiss them later or not.
Tell the story that Tom brought him out here. He found that silver dollar in the fire and stuff.
In 1919, Tom brought me. Oh wait a minute, that's a different story.
1919.
Frank really wants to go over to the old Fish Creek Lodge. The story behind this is that he and Tom Collenborn had been there, and they did some metal detecting, and Frank has done pretty well over there. It's a neat site. The intense heat melted the glass, so you can find actually little pieces of melted glass, balls of melted glass and stuff. It was very intense. It's kind of a cool site. You never know what you'll find there, but it's also a very dirty site. But you never know what you'll find elsewhere there. It has a long history. There were so many people came in through there. It was a supply stop. It was a staging stop before you would go up Fish Creek Hill or come down Fish Creek Hill to take a break. So there's always these different ramifications of the things you might find in the area. It doesn't really bother me because it gives me a chance to wander the area and kind of get my thoughts to myself. And not only maybe what we've done earlier, but what we're doing later, or kind of like run through things through my head. Or even then again, sometimes Frank and I always believe it has to be fun. And sometimes it's fun just to walk around and look at everything and let your mind be your camera. And maybe later something triggers it. Maybe I sit there and go, you know what, Frank, I saw this and I didn't even think about it, but it fits right here on that map. And I think I've solved things. So it's good to do something like that. It was good for Frank. Him and Trevor kind of working around. I don't want to say something like Frank won't be here forever, but someone wants to learn and pick up the trade and understand. Frank likes to teach about metal detecting and his insights and what his knowledge of it. And it's good for Trevor to kind of be around it and pick up what he can at the same token. But it kind of adds to necessarily a day of a lot of seriousness and some good finds and stuff. It always brings back in just some fun. And I think that's important too, where it's a little bit of history, it's a little bit of this, it's a little something completely different, but it's a little bit of fun. Just the guys out having a good time.
This is the foundation, this area through here, for Fish Creek Lodge. Now across the road is where they had their barn area. And this was a stop for people traveling up north to the dam, the workers and whatnot. And then around 1920, a guy bought this and he made it into like a dude ranch. And you could, it was like a hotel. People could rent a room. And what happened was in the 20s, the rooms were heated with gas heaters. And one of the heaters caught the place on fire and it burned. And it was a really hot fire. Like when you look around this foundation area, you'll find pieces of glass that just totally melted. Right in this area, over here, I got a target with this detector that was about 8 inches deep, and it was a silver dollar that had melted. So it's next to the hotel. So one of the problems when you're detecting here, this whole area is covered with 10 million nails and whatnot from the building. When the thing burned down, the walls fell down, and it's just covered. But if you take your time, you can find something. Like I said, I found a silver dollar melt. I gave it to Tom. You took me out here, you can have it. So the other thing that could be out here, the hotel had their own tokens. They're very rare, and they're worth over $5,000 a piece. So it'd be nice to find one of them. See what I mean? That's just from one spot. So what I'm trying to do is scrape some of this off, because with this detector, when you get something like this, it's like 3, 4, 5 on the scale. Every once in a while I just get a little bleep of like a coin reading. But one of the problems is you got, look at this shit. This whole area is covered with these. So to find something in this spot, you got to be really good. And of course I am, because I found a silver dollar here. Hey? You see what I got here? Just keep jumping higher.
Let me get down and scrape where you want.
Hey, see all the nails in this fucking shit?
There we go.
Shall I keep jumping up high? I had a reading of like 80. See what I mean?
Yeah.
88. But we'll weird.
Oh, stop.
Is that like a piece of dish?
That's a bone.
Bone. We found another bone. You know what? We'll add this to Trevor's bone collection. And what this was, this is a bone from a dead man's finger. They cut his finger off to get his ring, and this was laying there. So the signal I'm getting is from the ring. And it always brings you good luck here. Yeah. This old inn, they turned it into a dude ranch in like the 20s, early 20s. And cash was in short supply, so they made their own token. Well, these tokens are rare, and if you do find one, they're worth about $5,000–6,000 because of their rarity. So when I initially went to that spot with Tom Collenborn, we went there looking for a token, but instead I found a melted silver dollar. So I gave it to him.
Big rock here.
You're fucking dangerous for that.
No, it's all rock.
Guns and picks.
Big rock. Thing you pick to fucking get through is a big fucking. You do it from your side. It's a big ass fucking boulder. It's not gonna be under a rock.
How the fuck do you know? Somebody wants to hide a $20 gold piece. They're not going to just lay it somewhere. They'll get a rock and hide it
near the foundations or something. Step.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
Yeah, when you dig, pull the stuff away and unlayer your tongue. You go like this and it goes over.
Up above that ledge there.
You're like Magnuson. That's what he does.
It's this glass right here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's melted.
Are you filming?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
There's another piece, I think, somewhere down there. Too. Yeah, right
no.
there. This is
Yeah, what he's talking about.
melted glass.
The glass melted.
How hot it was.
I got it.
There's a nail right there. You see it? Try it again. Try it again. I got the nail out of the way. Oh, there's more nails. Try it again. There's like 4 nails in there.
Yeah, but I'm getting 65 and 72, 54 right in that area. So run that over this. That's what you do.
Well, if you hold it over there, I can't
Like
because
this.
my arm's only about 3 feet long. Well, yeah, but if you put... How about this? Bottle cap.
But set it right here. That's it. But see, that's an old,
It's an old fuck.
yeah, that's an old, because this place burned down in early 20s.
Well, I'm saying this is the step into a place. There's another foundation there. I figure you want to always kind of come in to wherever a lobby spot would be.
Does that say anything?
Nothing you can read.
It has to be an old, I bet it's an old beer cap.
Yeah. See where they broke it? Pop it. The opener.
You see, like with this, I'm looking for it like this.
Yeah, I know. I'm watching when you're doing it. See, we need a layout of the place because we know where some of the foundation pieces are. And if you look over here, see all these spots where people have dug?
These bottles are old. Not all of them. There's plenty of them that have.
And it melted down.
That out.
Huh?
That'd be nice to get that out.